Hey, world, welcome back to another episode of Be Inspired Podcast, where we're inspiring you to live the abundant life you deserve. So, I got another awesome guest on the line, but before we get into it, let's talk about it. Most people don't prepare because they think disaster will never happen to them until one day it does. It's a job loss, medical emergency, natural disaster, or an unexpected crisis. Life has a way of testing us without warning. It isn't where challenges come from. The question is whether we'll be ready when they do. Today's conversation isn't about living in fear. It's about living with confidence because preparation isn't a mindset of panic. It's a mindset of responsibility. So let's dive in. We have Suburban Prepper here. He's not a hobbyist who reads about preparedness in a book and decided to make videos about it. He's a retired combat veteran, medical professional, who has spent his entire life in the world he now teaches, carrying wounded out of 2 wars, working the floor of intensive care unit, and practicing as a family nurse practitioner. When he talks about trauma, austere medicine, survival, firearms, or self-reliance, he's not repeating something he found online. He's telling you what he actually done. So I have Suburban Prepper on the line. Welcome to the show, Suburban Prepper.
I'm happy to be here, Samuel. Thank you.
You're
How
welcome.
are you today?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well.
Super.
It's another beautiful day, and it's a great day to be on the podcast.
Yes.
Awesome. So
Great.
you've experienced situations most people only see in movies, right? So what moment convinced you that preparation can mean the difference between panic and peace?
Mindset. When a situation happens, it's the mindset that determines if you're going to panic or if things are going to be smoother. You don't have to know everything. Nobody knows everything, right? But can you do something to help somebody? And you're at your limit. Okay, you're at your limit. Sometimes we can't help everybody. So one, it has to come up here and here, the brain and the heart and soul. If these two are in mindset, then the rest of the body and your spirit, that's what's important to me. That's preparedness to start with.
Right. So how has serving in high pressure environments changed the way you approach your ordinary life?
A bit of paranoia.
Okay.
I mean, I've been in several wars, so I
Yeah.
can't help but always having my back against the wall, feeling safe. I look at somebody and be honest, I don't may be the nicest person in the world, but I look at it as a threat assessment. Whether I'm outside or at the mall or at the movie theater. So that the way my brain has been wired, and then I look, obviously, you don't need to tell me which way the exit is. I'm going to know that escape route and how to get there. And the medical side of me is, how can I help somebody if something bad happened? Well, if there was somebody that was disabled, we'd have to drag them out of a movie theater, for example. So I just put that into so I might go to the movies this month later on, check some of the new flicks out. So my mindset, that's how that's how I'm different. I think a lot of us are different in that manner. A lot of veterans, combat veterans. But I want to overcome that mindset with preparedness. I like to take a step over to circumvent the situation and make it better. Yeah.
So being that you're always analyzing, because you said you always analyzing the situation when you go into a room, when your back's against the wall in a restaurant. So what are some of the mental issues that you deal with that contribute to that? Someone would say, well, that's not normal. What would you say to somebody that's saying that?
Well, it's not normal. But then again, who is normal? Our brains get wired a certain way from combat. And that's our normal. And it's not a bad thing. It's just the way a lot of men and women that serve others, that's how we end up. I think normal is not experiencing anything good or bad or bad. I think that's abnormal. You're not ever worried about a threat. And I'm not saying that in a bad way, but
Yeah.
something bad happening. Like I live in the Midwest, which is Tornado Alley. So we prepare as much as we can for tornadoes, which includes a lot of praying. But you have to know so I think it's actually very good that you have that mindset. And I call that, the survival mindset of doing what has to be done sometimes.
So you said you're a combat medic. Many combat medics are usually airborne certified. Have you gone through that process or have you ever jumped out of planes as well as being a combat medic?
Yes. Oh, you, I was a paratrooper medic and a flight medic on the back of a helicopter. Not everybody can make it through jump school
Oh,
because
yeah.
it's very vigorous. And only the last statistic I read, only about 20% of soldiers actually get the opportunity to learn how to jump out of airplanes. That's just where they end up with 5 jumps from the training.
Yeah.
Then
I've
you
been
get
there.
assigned to
It's
a
nice.
paratrooper unit. In my case, the 160th SOAR. And that's where you learn really the fundamentals of static line jumping. My unit's mission, we did Pathfinder and search and rescue. So at one point, I'm the medic on the ground with the Pathfinder FART team. And the other minute, we're not a medical unit, the 160th, but we would take our wounded from the people we were supporting, and I would be the one taking care of them as we DD out back to the rear.
Yeah, my brother was a Pathfinder, infantry Pathfinder, and then I also went to jump school. So you're right. It's just a select few that gets to go to jump school and make it happen.
I remember, it's funny, in jump school, this was back in March of 1990. My roster number was 111. And when I went through SEER school at Fort Bragg or Camp McCall, my criminal number was 111. Coincidentally, I just a freak of coincidences. The stars and the moons were all aligned, and God said, your criminal number, because when you're captured, you're considered a criminal in our survival training, criminal number 111. So anytime we would talk to our captors, we'd have to address in that manner. So that number 111 was quite significant. Just the two totally different schools and the same number. I thought I had to mention that.
Yeah.
I thought it was funny.
No, it's funny because my number for basic training was 444.
Wow.
And then now that I got my home, my next door neighbor is 444. So
It makes you remember.
yeah, just a constant reminder of what you've been through and how you've grown as a soldier, you know?
Yeah.
So what's something you learned about human nature during emergencies that surprised you?
You would be surprised of a mother caring for her or his, well, it's her, caring for their children under stress. You cannot underestimate the strength of the feminine when it comes to defending or caring for their children, way more than what a man would do. Women, and I say this in the most respect, when it comes to defending family, there's no gloves on. It's all women in general, are very, very protective of family. And I like that. I like that a lot. A lot of the survival and the prepping that I do and teach, men could learn a lot from the preparation, such as gardening skills. How many men know when a baby is sick just by looking at the baby? So I as a family nurse practitioner and as a medical provider, I have modules on infants, actually, how to tell, the most common conditions that you can encounter with an infant. That's for the grandpa, the grandma, the mother, and the father. And watch the video and they'd learn that, yeah, okay. But the sheer will of the feminine is amazing.
You often teach people how to prepare physically. What does it mean to prepare emotionally for a crisis?
One, it's okay to cry. There's no foul in crying. Emotions are like a roller coaster, right? You have to feel something. We're human, right? We're all human. You have to feel something. I try to feel love in my heart. Sometimes I feel sad. I can't control how I feel, but I can control how I react to the environment. You, you don't suppress your emotions. Not healthy. This morning, I was I was doing some packing, and I went to high school a couple years in North Carolina, Pine Forest High School, and I went through I haven't seen my yearbook in goodness 15 years. So I opened it up and I looked at all, and we looked so young back then. So that emotion of youth overwhelmed me for a minute. It's a beautiful thing.
You talk about suppressing emotions and not suppressing them, but being in the military and dealing with a lot of trauma like you've seen, some of those things have to get suppressed. So what advice you can give someone or tell someone about those emotions that they may be holding on to?
I don't have the best advice. Here's what I say. I think of that song by Pink Floyd, Comfortably Numb, because you have to go numb to stuff. When you're seeing something traumatic, devastating to another human being, you have to turn off. That's when you have to turn off that emotion. That roller coaster has to go down and that ride has to stop. You can't let those, if you let your emotions turmoil, what you can offer to help somebody will be not beneficial because you're freaking out. So I've learned in my little robotic way, when it comes to medical emergencies, I just know how to click, turn it off, focus on the issue, deal with the emotions in the aftermath, and an after action report after, usually talking to myself. But yeah, you have to sometimes suppress those emotions because they can get the best of you.
What's the difference between someone who stays calm in a crisis and someone who panics?
How much? And when you ask that, I think of the first time I took care of some wounded during the Desert Storm that were blown up. I mean, literally blown up. Okay. Limbs were missing. The calm part of me wanted to think airway, breathing, circulation, disability, exposure. The chaotic side of me wanted to go, ah, but that wasn't going to help that wounded soldier on the ground later on in the back of the helicopter. So you can have a little chaos in your mind, but you got to sometimes smack your face. This is what I got to do to help this guy. Turns out I learned how to start IV in the neck really quick because that was the only access that I had, and I got it. And you can't start IVs. Not that that's in a combat lifesaver course, and I would never tell anyone to ever do that, but that's something that I had to do. That was the only access that I had. We didn't have the intraosseous devices back then like they do now, where you can just drill something into the bottom of the leg to initiate fluids. So you deal with what you got. It can get chaotic, but you have to overcome that chaos and embrace that chaos as your friend and make it work for you. And then if you're calm and collective, the tribe that you're with is calm and collective. I think it spreads. When you're chaotic and scared, everybody else gets chaotic. You have to, even if you're unsure, you have to give that You have to come off as, okay, this is what we're going to do. I'm in charge of this, but somebody else is going to call a medevac, get the birds in, which, so you have to express it. Sometimes you have to suppress it. That makes sense.
Tell us about Suburban Prepper and what you do on a daily basis.
Well, I live preparedness. It's not just a mindset. There's certain actions. Like I have my survival garden in the backyard. It's called survival garden. Okay, it's a garden in the backyard, but it's my survival garden. Um, I think of the most calorie dense foods that I can grow in the environment that I'm in. So this year I'm growing carrots because we're moving, and I want to give the person that's going to buy the house, they're going to take over my survival garden. I want them to have something nice. So it's all carrots this year. So you look at the environment that you're in and the threats that you encounter and how you can counter. Like I say, in the Midwest, well, when there's tornadoes, there's a lot of rain. If you have a basement, you have to worry about flooding. What happens with a tornado? The power goes out, so the sump pump no longer works. The pump that keeps the basement from being flooded, because all of the Midwest is basically a big marsh underground. So my mindset, okay, well, we have a generator. I can use the generator to force the water out using a hose. And then if that generator fails, I can do it manually. You always have 3 routes on a patrol: your primary, your secondary, and your tertiary. So, but if you don't practice those other 2, the secondary and the third tertiary, you have failed. You have failed at this station and you're a no-go. So I can't help sometimes get that out of my system. But, and 2, you sometimes you do fail, but you learn from those mistakes. And then you just carry on with your life, right? I mean, but my experience in survival in the 160th, from being a combat medic to being a nurse practitioner working in intensive care, I became the survivalist after I graduated from SEER school back in so long ago. Okay. And that changed, that training just changed my mindset. And when we would go out to the field, unlike conventional units, we would do a 5-day mission. We'd sleep about 6 hours, 5 hours, train on survival skills, and then patrol at night. That was how we operated. And we would do that every couple months, the Pathfinder and FARP team. So that ingrained and that's more outdoor survival skills. I live in a suburb, okay? I'm not going to be making a rest to sleep outdoors. So how do I keep my house in proper order and survive? That's how I see survival. So I do have like survival videos on emergency home repairs that you can think of in my total preparedness program. The biggest one is how to fix, well, not the biggest, how to fix a wall or a hole in your roof, for example. If you don't have the supplies to do it on hand, and if you don't practice doing it, it's going to rain in your house. And that brings mold and infection and pneumonia. So conversely, I go over medical conditions that you could encounter when bad things happen. And I also studied natural medicine. I did a fellowship at George Washington University on complementary and alternative medicine. So I'd like to look at the medical from the alternative side of medicine, incorporating that with the prescribed medicine. So I have modules on naturopathics to help with infections to complement the prescribed treatments.
So, say somebody meets you today, what would be the first step you would tell them to start preparing for a disaster if it was to hit, or survival skills in general?
Starts buy a good, the medic in me always comes back. Okay. The first thing I would tell someone to do is get a first aid kit, but don't get one of those flim flam first aid kits. Piecemeal it out, but get a good tourniquet. Get a great tourniquet, like a cat tourniquet or a soft T tourniquet. I prefer the cat tourniquets. They're easier to apply. Learn how to use that tourniquet. Have a training tourniquet and then have the real tourniquet for your family. And everybody trains on that tourniquet. That's how I see it. Um, Look and realize what your threats are in your environment. And threats does not mean bad people. It means what you're encountering and what you're going to have to deal with. That's how I'd like to see that.
Okay, so getting a tourniquet, practice on a tourniquet, then also getting a good first aid kit.
Yeah. Get a great first aid kit, and be practical with it. Your first aid kit's not meant to have Band-Aid. That's your first aid kit's meant to airway, breathing, bleeding. That's what your trauma first aid kit should focus on. After that, you have another aid bag for the boo-boos. When I was a medic, I always kept they would come up, my boys would come up to me. Well, we had all men in the unit at the time, and they had a boo-boo. So I kept the Band-Aids out on the outer part of my medic bag so I didn't have to go dig for them for just a Band-Aid. So, yeah, that's, the medic in me always comes in,
Yeah.
you know.
How important is it to being prepared and what you teach everyone? How important is it in entrepreneurship and being prepared?
Study, take chances, read from other entrepreneurship. You have to, it's not, you have to know you learn what other people did. That's why I like to do podcasts. I like to talk to other entrepreneurs, other people, not just about what they did great, but what they failed at. You learn from failure, and that's how you become more successful. There's plenty of resources on the channels, on the social media, where people talk about different aspects of entrepreneurship. For me, it's making the total preparedness program. That's the route I went for my, come on in. Good. I'm just doing a podcast. Sorry. So that's the entrepreneurship, I think.
What's the biggest emergency people are unprepared for, not because of supplies, but because of mindset?
Tension, pneumothorax, chest trauma to me is a big, if you can't breathe, you're not going to go too far. So learning how to handle chest trauma, I think, is important. We talk about chest seals, and I do discuss using for tension pneumothorax needle decompression. Truth is, that's not something that you can do unless you're licensed to do it. But sometimes it's good to have the gear that you're not really going to use in case somebody else is qualified to use it. You have that gear. So step up from your prepping and your survival above what your level of comfort. And when an expert steps in, they may not have that gear, but you have that gear available, and you can help people. Right? So I tell people in your first aid kit, carry those needle decompressions, the 14 and the 12 gauge and the 10 gauge now needle decompression needles for someone. You may not know how to use it, and you can't know everything. How hard is it? I mean, it's pretty impossible to train in sticking needles in somebody because that can, make breathing stop. So always step up on your prepping and then learn everything that you can. That's, I think, important.
What's one fear you've had to overcome yourself?
2 years ago, 3 years ago now, I went into congestive heart failure. I was out in the backyard working in my survival garden, and I felt like I get a little emotional. I was out in the backyard, and I felt like I was in a pool breathing water. And turns out went into acute congestive heart failure. And that set me back physically. And 3 years, I'm recovered from it. My output has improved. So I couldn't really control how that happened. It's just the way the heart was pumping. But that was a big setback. I was out for a while. I was ready to meet the maker, if you know what I mean. And I was at peace with it. But it wasn't, as I was being put on a ventilator, and I'm like, okay, I'm probably not getting out of this. But here I am today. And it's been a rough 3 years. September. It's funny, that song by Earth, Wind, and Fire, September 21st, is the day that happened. So I remember that 21st day of September, if you know what I mean. I went into heart failure that day. I'll never forget it.
Okay. So, what's the difference between being prepared and trying to control everything?
You can't control everything. Nobody can control everything. Being prepared is being in your lane, but having a pretty broad lane to be in. As a survivalist, okay, I have to be prepared with my truck. I have to know the basics of how to get from point A to point B. It's beyond what a PMCS is, but I'm not a mechanic. So how to prevent problems from becoming problems in the first place is prevention is so important. I mentioned the word, and you know what PMCS means.
Yeah.
Preventive maintenance checks and
Yeah.
services. It's ingrained in our
100%.
brain. But didn't realize how important all that was, because it kept the four wheels on the vehicle driving, because it sure beats having to hump that distance. So, but you can't be prepared for everything. That's just impossible. But that's another reason why I made my total preparedness program. So not everybody knows everything about the medical field. Not everybody knows about defensive operations or offensive operations, God forbid. I have a 30 module land navigation course that I believe was, how many times have you done a land navigation course? I was like, but how you present this to somebody that's never done a land navigation course to make it fun? So I painstakingly went through and made 30 videos on land navigation, how to triangulate points, how to triangulate or make points looking at the stars, even how to get around. And of course, we all know how the sun works to calculate time and location and distance. But if you don't know it, you don't know it. If you have an idea, you can learn from it. My videos are great, but you need to practice these skills outside of watching a video. You have to practice the skills.
Imagine someone's listening, says, I'll prepare when I have more money, more time, when life slows down. What's the one thing you'd want them to understand before they wait another day?
Start today. Start today. You can't wait for something to happen tomorrow, right? You have to start with what am I going to do today? What can I do today to make my tomorrow better? And that's not just about, bling bling. It's about what's in here. It's about your physical body. It's about your family. It's about relationships. So you have to put a little effort in today to make for a better tomorrow. And isn't that what really preparedness really is? And in the big picture, I think. Yeah.
So, just one more question for you. But before we get to it, how can people connect with you if they're looking to learn more about survival skills and working with you?
So my website is, I have a website called tpp.suburbanprepper.com, and check it out. I have you can download a video, I'm sorry, it's a PDF on a 30-day preparedness. You want to start, if you could start with 30 days, great. Start with 3 days. Then go to a week, go to a month. But yeah, tpp.suburbanprepper.com. That's how you can find me online on the webs,
Okay.
as us older folks say.
And my last question for you is, what is something that you thought I may ask, but I didn't quite ask it to you?
I enjoyed being interviewed by a fellow paratrooper. Let me just say that. Okay. Uh, I'm I'm sort of glad you didn't want to delve into the gore and the blood and guts of combat, because it's something that happens. But sometimes I get people want to talk about that, and there's no. I get a little perplexed sometimes thinking about it, but that's but no, I really enjoyed our our podcast conversation that we had today. You know.
Well, it was nice having you on the show. If anybody's been listening and anything resonates with you that Suburban Prepper said, go ahead and let's have a conversation in the comment section. Share what your biggest insight was about this video, this episode. All right. So thank you all for watching Be Inspired Podcast. We're inspiring you to live the abundant life you deserve. We'll see you guys on the next episode. All right. Peace.
Thank you, everybody.